In 1916, Madame C.J. Walker acquired what was then the costliest residence ever bought by an African American. Situated in Irvington-on-Hudson, her grand estate ran her $250,000. She kept a complete household staff on payroll around the clock. She piloted a tailor-made electric vehicle. Outlets from white presses labeled her the richest black woman in the country. Only 6 months after settling there, the area's country club turned down her application for membership, offering zero justification. The yacht club blocked her relatives from access. White locals passed around petitions pressing for her to vacate the premises. She had reached the age of 50. Yet this isn't merely an account of bias during the Gilded Age. It's the tale of a trailblazer who channeled dismissal into a campaign that lifted up millions. It's focused on an estate that evolved into a nerve center for African American achievement. And it's rooted in a heritage that keeps fueling innovators even after a full century. Villa Lawaro remains intact nowadays, perched above the Hudson River. That year, 1867, saw the birth of Sarah Breedlove on December 23rd amid a cotton plantation in Louisiana's Delta region. Her parents, Owen and Minerva Breedlove, had spent their whole lives in bondage until just 2 years prior. The Emancipation Proclamation liberated them back in 1863. The Civil War wrapped up in 1865. Come 1867, the Breedloves toiled on that very same Louisiana Delta plantation, now as sharecroppers. They weren't owned by the property holder anymore, yet they surrendered a share of each crop's yield to him. Sarah held the distinction of being her family's initial freeborn offspring. More crucially, she became the first not bound by law to any other person. Still, liberty, amid Reconstruction-era Louisiana, brought along hardship, brutality, and scant possibilities. The clan resided in a single-room shack. Sarah bedded down on earth and ground. From her earliest steps, she labored amid the cotton rows. Both parents passed away prior to her 7th birthday. In 1874, yellow fever claimed her mother. Her father soon followed suit. Sarah relocated northward to Vicksburg, Mississippi, alongside her elder sister, Luvania. They dwelled with their sister's husband, whom Sarah once called abusive. When she hit 14, Sarah wed Moses McWilliams. She admitted candidly that the union served as a way out from her brother-in-law's mistreatment. He was 19 at the time. She was 14. Their union yielded a single offspring, daughter Alelia, who arrived in 1885. 2 years on, Moses McWilliams perished. Certain reports point to a lynching. Alternatives propose mishap. Sarah kept silent in public regarding the details. Now 20, she stood widowed, tasked with raising a toddler alone. In 1889, she headed to St. Louis, Missouri. Her siblings plied their trade as barbers in the city, scraping by enough to secure lodging and nourish their households. Sarah took up laundry duties. 6 days weekly, she laundered garments for white households. The labor ravaged her hands. Lye soap scorched her flesh. She pulled in about $1.50 daily whenever gigs held steady. Those earnings stretched to handle housing, meals, and Alelia's requirements. Alelia went to public classes. Sarah prioritized schooling, even if it required skimping on sustenance. She aimed for her child to access doors she'd never glimpsed. Yet beyond financial strain, Sarah confronted a fresh challenge: her hair loss. The toll of bereavement, inadequate diet, and scalp infections from rare cleansing had wrecked her tresses. African American women during the 1890s lacked viable hair treatments. Many resorted to abrasive lye-laden goods or skipped them outright. Styles like weaves and wraps prevailed. Baldness carried deep stigma. Sarah experimented with all available cures. None delivered results. Then, in 1904, she recounted a vision. A tall African-American man materialized, revealing a recipe for hair restoration. She blended the components and rubbed them onto her head. Regrowth soon followed. Divine revelation or narrative flourish. Either way, Sarah uncovered a gem. She started peddling her blend to fellow black women around St. Louis. It proved successful. Those with sparse locks witnessed fresh growth. Buzz traveled via black congregations and gatherings. Her concoction featured sulfur to combat head irritations, plus assorted oils for nourishing strands and awakening roots. The recipe lacked novelty, yet its potency and targeted appeal to black consumers shone. Mainstream beauty firms overlooked black buyers altogether. Sarah spotted a vast, neglected niche potentially valued in the millions. By 1905, she shifted to Denver, Colorado. A brother-in-law resided there and had touted prospects in letters. She showed up with a mere $1.50 to her name. Days brought cooking jobs. Evenings involved hawking her hair goods house to house in black communities. She crafted a spiel, highlighting poise in appearance. Black women merited beauty and confidence. Robust hair transcended frivolity. It embodied esteem. The idea struck a chord. Business climbed consistently. January 1906 brought her marriage to Charles Joseph Walker, a salesman for newspaper promotions. She adopted his last name, adopting Madame C.J. Walker for her enterprise. Madame evoked continental polish and authority. Charles aided in crafting promos and broadening reach. The union endured for 6 years until it dissolved in divorce, yet their collaboration in business turned out to be highly beneficial. By 1907, Madame Walker had enlisted and instructed a number of sales representatives. Known as Walker agents, these women canvassed neighborhoods, marketing the products and showcasing the full Walker method. This approach entailed cleansing with Walker's botanical shampoo, rubbing wonderful hair grower onto the scalp, and employing hot combs to smooth and arrange hair. Walker didn't originate the straightening comb, a device in use for years, but she elevated its role within a complete hair regimen. She instructed her agents on safe methods to prevent scalding the hair or skin. Over time, the Walker method stood as a hallmark of expert care for black hair. In 1908, Walker shifted her operations to Pittsburgh. The area boasted a substantial black community and offered prime positioning for shipping goods nationwide. There, she launched Lelia College, dedicated to preparing Walker agents. Attendees covered fees to master the Walker method. Upon completion, they earned credentials and access to wholesale product buys for resale. Through this setup, Walker devised an enterprise that uplifted other black women. Agents typically made $5 to $15 weekly, far surpassing wages from household jobs. Her leading sellers pulled in more than $1,000 yearly, a remarkable sum for black women back then. Beyond hair techniques, the college covered entrepreneurship, personal care, and poise. Walker insisted her agents embodied their community with every doorstep visit. Come 1910, the enterprise had surpassed Pittsburgh's capacity. Walker transferred to Indianapolis, Indiana, drawn by its robust rail links. This allowed swift delivery of goods throughout the U.S. She secured a plot at 640 Northwest Street and erected a production facility. The Madame C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company hired scores of staff. They blended formulas, bottled items, and dispatched shipments to an expanding array of agents. Walker committed to up-to-date machinery and rigorous standards. Every package featured her image on the label. She embodied the brand herself. By 1911, Walker oversaw more than 1,000 agents spanning the United States and the Caribbean. Her reach extended to Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, and Central America. Walker agents trailed black women wherever they settled. She pushed promotions in black publications, funding entire pages with endorsements and contrasting photos of transformations. Detractors mainly black scholars and reporters, wondered if Walker's venture fostered self-loathing. Did hair straightening mimic whiteness? Walker countered that her line focused on wellness, not conformity. She addressed scalp ailments and aided professional grooming in a world quick to critique black looks. She stood firm against regrets for giving black women hair options. The controversy lingered for years, but Walker's buyers showed their support through purchases. Daily revenue topped $1,000 by 1911. Walker's started journeying non-stop, signing up agents and showing off products. She engaged with congregations, organizations, and gatherings. Her talks emphasized financial autonomy and cultural dignity. She wove chances for enterprise with efforts to advance the race. Black women could sustain themselves, they could secure homes, they could amass fortunes. Walker showed the way, having achieved it personally. At 44, she stood as proof. In 1912, Walker chose a move that reshaped her persona permanently. She set off overseas. Scant black American women possessed the means or liberty for global voyages. Walker aimed to prove a black woman could navigate the globe on par with others. She voyaged to Central America and the Caribbean. Stops included Panama, Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, and Costa Rica. In every spot, she connected with local entrepreneurs and set up supply chains for her goods. She snapped pictures amid iconic sites. These shots ran in U.S. black press. Walker, poised in fine attire amid lush scenery. Walker conferring with regional leaders. The point rang out. A black woman raised on a Louisiana estate could earn esteem globally. The journey served pragmatic ends too. She enlisted representatives and examined regional styling customs. Caribbean needs diverged from those in America. Walker tailored her offerings in response. Back home, she brought broader territories and acclaim as a worldly magnate. By 1913, Walker's fortune had soared to levels astonishing for any woman, especially one from impoverished black roots. Modest figures pegged her yearly earnings over $100,000. Other reports hinted at surpassing $200,000 annually. While typical U.S. households scraped by on about $800 a year, Walker gathered riches, matching those of white male tycoons. She started snapping up properties. In Indianapolis, she added land near her plant. In New York, she claimed a Harlem row house at 136 West 136th Street. Harlem was emerging as the epicenter of African American culture across the United States. Walker was eager to immerse herself in this vibrant scene. Beyond that, she bought a plot of land and set her sights on an even grander project, a rural retreat that could stand toe-to-toe with the luxurious properties of affluent white tycoons. In 1913, Walker journeyed to Europe, exploring Paris, Monte Carlo, and the French Riviera. There, she delved into European building styles and decorative arts. She connected with gallery owners and craftsmen specializing in furnishings. All this was in service of the grand residence she envisioned constructing. By 1914, Walker had secured a parcel in Irvington-on-Hudson, New York. The community lay roughly 20 miles north of Manhattan, hugging the banks of the Hudson River. Affluent white residents from the city maintained sprawling estates in the area. It was a prestigious, serene enclave with strict social barriers. No African American households resided there at the time. Walker invested around $27,000 for slightly over 4.5 acres with a commanding vista of the waterway. The site promised breathtaking panoramas. She enlisted Vertner Tandy to craft the design for her estate. Tandy ranked among the pioneering licensed African American architects in New York State. A graduate of Tuskegee Institute, he had furthered his education at Cornell University. His portfolio included religious buildings, educational facilities, and residences for African American patrons throughout the Northeast. For Walker, his work would break new ground. An Italian Renaissance-inspired villa, that would boldly showcase African-American affluence and refinement on a global stage. Tandy sketched blueprints for a 34-room residence. The structure would cover about 20,000 square feet over 3 levels. Its facade would boast pale stucco surfaces, a tiled roof in deep red, and decorative elements drawn from the Italian estates Walker admired on her overseas trip. Building commenced in 1916. Walker allocated roughly $150,000 for the endeavor. In reality, expenses ballooned well beyond that figure. Laborers dug out the base and started forming the underpinnings for what promised to be the priciest dwelling ever acquired by an African American to date. Walker oversaw the work with keen attention. She commuted from Indianapolis to check on developments. She weighed in on choices for building supplies, room arrangements, and surface treatments. Perfection was her standard. Highlights inside would include a towering 2-level foyer paved in marble. A majestic stairway would ascend to the upper story. The music space would fit a pipe organ plus chairs for audiences. A study would store Walker's expanding array of volumes. The formal eating area could host 24 diners around one table. Walker sourced bespoke pieces from overseas workshops. She snapped up Oriental carpets, Belgian wall hangings, and canvas works. Her selections aimed to blend continental traditions with nods to African roots. She arranged for painted likenesses of herself and relatives. Whenever possible, she sought out creations by African American talents. The surrounding landscape demanded equal care. Walker brought on garden experts to shape elegant outdoor spaces. Tiered grassy areas would slope down to the water's edge. Gravel walkways would meander amid beds of roses, peonies, and hydrangeas. A serene pool would reflect the heavens. The grounds would also encompass a shelter for her vehicles, a glass house for constant growing, and living spaces for the help tending the property. Walker arranged for a dedicated team, including a head of household, chef, cleaning staff, groundskeepers, and driver. The majority would reside on site. Walker relied on her daughter, Alelia, to oversee domestic operations. By then, Alelia had wed twice. Her latest spouse was Dr. Wiley Wilson, a medical professional. She had styled her name as Alelia Walker, inserting an apostrophe for flair. At 31 in 1916, Alelia had observed her mother's rise from the start. She had contributed to the enterprise from her youth. Now, she would assist in forging a hub for the upper echelons of African American society. The pair of women pondered the home's role. It transcended mere shelter. It was meant to function as a venue for prominent African American figures in leadership, creativity, and thought. Walker aimed to entertain those driving advancements in African American arts and governance. She sought to establish a haven where they could convene, plot, and deliberate free from external judgment. The build dragged on past expectations. Supply shortages and workforce issues hampered momentum. Walker became restless. She had spent a lifetime aspiring to a home befitting her achievements. When the U.S. joined World War I in 1917, the conflict diverted supplies and focus. The villa's progress persisted, yet more sluggishly. Walker capitalized on the pauses to polish her ideas. She exchanged letters with Tandy on alterations. She pushed for a sunroom to frame the river scenery. She called for extra washing areas and storage spaces. The scope grew. Walker delved deeper into the outdoor layouts as well. She pored over texts on garden planning. She sought advice from plant specialists on species suited to the Hudson Valley's conditions. Her goal was flora that would flower across the warmer seasons. Walker dreamed of throwing elegant garden parties at the estate, places where prominent black figures could mingle in an environment as grand as any owned by white elites. By 1918, the Villa Lawara was almost finished. To choose a name for her property, she turned to Enrico Caruso, the renowned Italian opera singer, who proposed blending her daughter, Alelia's name, with the Italian term for peace. He incorporated the initial letters from Walker and Robinson, Alelia's married name, creating Villa Laro Lelia, later simplified to Villa Lawaro. She embraced the suggestion right away, appreciating its refined European flair, its tribute to her daughter, and its declaration that this was a distinguished estate with a unique character. At the time, Walker was 50 years old. The house wrapped up construction in 1918, with total expenses surpassing $250,000, equivalent to about $7 million today. It marked the priciest residence ever bought by an African American. Rising 3 stories high, the structure boasted a red-tiled roof and cream-colored stucco exterior. Intricate embellishments featured sculpted stone balustrades, curved arch windows, and ornate wrought iron. The front entrance showcased enormous wooden doors brought over from Italy. The 2-level foyer left newcomers in awe. A black and white marble floor, laid out in a checkered design, stretched across it. Walls climbed 20 feet to an ornate, gold-leafed coffered ceiling. A sweeping staircase ascended to the upper level, its railing crafted from hand-carved mahogany. Sparkling crystal chandeliers dangled overhead, while sunlight streamed in via lofty windows. The music room took up the full eastern side of the ground floor, spanning roughly 40 feet by 30 feet under 18-foot ceilings. One entire wall held a pipe organ that Walker had specially ordered from the Este Organ Company in Vermont for $8,000. The organ showcased meticulously carved wooden pipes and ivory keyboards. A Steinway grand piano stood close by, and tiered seating could fit up to 60 listeners. The area was crafted for concerts and musical events. In the library, Walker's assortment of volumes on commerce, history, and African American heritage found their place. Floor-to-ceiling built-in bookcases covered 3 sides, with a sliding ladder for reaching the higher ones. Plush, leather armchairs and soft reading lamps formed cozy nooks. The space also showcased her growing array of African sculptures and relics, gathered from her journeys abroad. The elegant dining room accommodated 24 at its bespoke table, with seats cushioned in silk damask. A 12-foot-long buffet ran along one wall, while glass-fronted cabinets displayed fine crystal and porcelain. Monogrammed silverware filled the drawers for serving. French doors led out to a veranda with views of the Hudson River. Walker's personal quarters claimed a large portion of the 2nd story. Her sleeping chamber centered on a 4-poster bed draped in silk. An adjoining lounge allowed for confidential discussions and letter writing. The adjoining bath offered a marble tub, standalone shower, and full wall mirrors. A walk-in closet stored her vast array of attire, including numerous evening gowns, everyday outfits, outerwear, and ornaments. A dedicated maid kept her garments and jewels in perfect condition. Beyond her rooms, the 2nd floor had 6 more bedrooms, all with ensuite baths for hosting visitors or relatives overnight. Alelia kept her dedicated apartment for visits. Up on the 3rd level, servants' rooms and storage areas were situated. 8 chambers served the resident household staff, and a spacious attic stored luggage and off-season belongings. Down in the basement, the building's utilities were housed. A coal-burning furnace distributed warmth via radiators throughout. The kitchen, a vast basement wing equipped with oversized ranges and ovens for cooking big banquets. Cooling units preserved perishables, and an elevator shaft carried finished plates up to the dining area. A wine cellar kept selections from Europe and California chilled. Though Walker rarely touched alcohol, she offered wine during upscale meals. The laundry area featured heavy-duty washers, drying lines, and stoves for warming irons to press sheets and apparel. The attached garage sheltered 3 vehicles. Walker's favorite was a bespoke electric automobile from the Detroit Electric Car Company, trimmed in mahogany inside with leather upholstery. She favored it for short drives due to its silent operation and easy start. No manual cranking required. For distant journeys, she had 2 gas-engine cars, tended by a full-time driver, who chauffeured her as needed. The estate's landscape demanded ongoing care. 2 dedicated groundskeepers tended the terraced lawns, sloping to the water's edge. The structured gardens displayed symmetrical plots of roses, peonies, hydrangeas, and rotating blooms. Paved walks linked various garden sections. A serene pool by the manor reflected the heavens and passing clouds. Inside the greenhouse, exotic orchids and hothouse flora grew year-round. Fresh blooms adorned every corner of the home, refreshed by staff each day. A kitchen garden on the grounds provided produce for the household. The property required 12 to 15 employees year-round, varying with the seasons. A chief housekeeper oversaw the women handling domestic duties, including dusting, washing clothes, and day-to-day chores. The chef designed daily menus and cooked every dish. A pair of housemaids tidied bedrooms and waited on guests for elaborate evening meals. Gardeners worked under a lead caretaker who organized plant rotations and upkeep schedules. The driver also served as a general repairman, fixing small issues across the grounds. Walker's private assistant handled her incoming letters and arranged her meetings. She offered her workers salaries, far exceeding typical wages, convinced that fair pay was essential for good service. Most of the staff consisted of black individuals, although a few roles went to white hires. Walker equipped the residents with a phone network reaching key areas inside. From there, she could reach out to employees or dial into the city. Electric lights illuminated the entire building, a rarity back in 1918. The home boasted radiant heat distribution, running water in all baths, and advanced air circulation setups. Walker invested generously in innovations that boosted convenience and productivity. She decorated the villa with items gathered from her trips abroad. Silk brocade-covered French chairs, marble-surfaced Italian consoles, vintage English cupboards, luxurious Persian carpets blanketed the polished wood flooring in principal spaces. Gilded framed canvases adorned the walls, some capturing continental scenery, others portraying African themes. Walker arranged for renowned painters to create her likenesses. In one, she appeared poised in a sophisticated dress, radiating poise and assurance. It was displayed prominently in the foyer for all guests to admire. That summer of 1918, Walker settled into Villa Lawaro at age 50. Born on a Louisiana farm to formerly enslaved parents, she had once toiled as a laundress, earning just $1.50 daily. Yet now she commanded a grand estate, comparable to those of the Vanderbilts or Rockefellers. Through sheer determination, she demonstrated that a black woman could amass fortune and indulge in opulence. Still, money failed to buy her a place in white circles. Walker learned this harsh truth right away. Nearby stood the Irvington Country Club, patronized by affluent white landowners along the Hudson. Soon after arriving at Villa Lawaro, she sought membership. The club denied her outright, offering no reason. Walker knew why. Her race sufficed as grounds for exclusion. She tried the area's sailing club next, another outright refusal. Even a ladies' group, focused on philanthropy, turned her away. Soon, white locals started gathering signatures on protests. Certain ones argued that a black household would drag down land prices. Others fretted over the example it might encourage. If one prosperous black family could claim a spot in Irvington, more could arrive. The established residents aimed to block any such trend. Area papers started running pieces on Walker, seldom in positive light. Some delved into her home's grandeur, but cast doubt on whether such extravagance suited a Negro woman. Additional reports highlighted her entrepreneurial triumphs, yet suggested black prosperity felt somehow improper. The Irvington Gazette printed a piece musing if the town could preserve its heritage amid newcomers alien to its customs. The intent rang obvious. Walker was an outsider. Rather than yield, she amplified her stand. She refused to part with the estate or withdraw to Harlem or Indianapolis. Having bought the land lawfully and erected the structure from her earnings, she resolved to reside there honorably. Walker started organizing soirees at Villa Lawaro to highlight black excellence on purpose. She welcomed notable black figures as guests. W.E.B. Du Bois joined her for supper. Though Booker T. Washington had passed in 1915, Walker had backed his efforts at Tuskegee. Now she entertained emerging black thinkers and advocates. Poet and rights campaigner James Weldon Johnson frequented the villa's events. Educator and activist Mary McLeod Bethune did the same. Far from mere socializing, Walker transformed her residence into a hub for black strategizing. There, leaders conferred on the mass northward exodus of black Southerners. They weighed responses to bigotry, mob attacks, and hangings. They mapped out court fights against racial barriers and bias. Villa Lawaro emerged as a base for black advocacy. Walker bankrolled many of these initiatives personally, contributing thousands to the NAACP. She supported the National Association of Colored Women. She endowed college aid for black youth. She aided shelters for black orphans and retirement facilities for elders. Her charitable efforts had started long before, yet the estate provided her with an ideal stage to broaden them further. Beyond that, Walker organized events centered solely on socializing. She arranged lavish dinner soirees, where attendees dined off china, edged in gold, and sipped from fine crystal glasses. Live music filled the music room with performances, while dancers graced the grand entrance hall. Such events highlighted the accomplishments and heritage of black people. They demonstrated that black Americans were capable of crafting venues of sophistication and grace that rivaled anything in white society. By 1918 and 1919, the Harlem Renaissance was gaining momentum. Emerging black authors, poets, composers, and creators were pioneering fresh modes of creativity. Walker was eager to bolster this wave. She welcomed artists seeking sponsorship into her residence. Although Langston Hughes didn't visit Villa Lawaro until after her passing, numerous other authors and entertainers stopped by while she was alive. She hired composers to craft original works for events at the property. She bought pieces from black creators and showcased them in prominent spots. To her, nurturing black arts held the same weight as fostering black enterprises. These assemblies drew notice from outside black circles, too. Certain white reformers and progressives angled for invites to Villa Lawaro. They were intrigued by this black entrepreneur, who had amassed such fortune. Walker chose carefully among white guests she allowed. She rejected the role of a spectacle or staging black prosperity for white amusement, yet she nurtured ties with white supporters of civil rights and equality. Several of those links turned useful when she required sway in political arenas. Walker's daughter, Alelia, adopted a contrasting style for the estate. Whereas her mother chiefly employed Villa Lawaro for advocacy and artistic functions, Alelia treated it like a hub for leisure. She threw all-night jazz bashes. She welcomed rising talents and free-spirited bohemians who challenged norms. Alelia leaned more toward fun than causes, even if the boundary often blurred. The revelries at Villa Lawaro gained mythic status within black social spheres. Invites were highly prized. Showing up signaled you'd made it. You belonged to black America's upper echelon. The estate evolved into an emblem, not only of Walker's riches, but of black potential. If a woman born in bondage could erect this, imagine what her successors might accomplish. Still, the white locals in Irvington never warmed to Walker's existence there. Exclusive clubs barred her entry. Neighbors snubbed her in public. As Walker motored through town in her electric vehicle, white folks averted their eyes. Parents told their kids to avoid any black youngsters from the property. Nearby churches shunned her participation. She had to journey to Harlem or Manhattan for services. The exclusion hurt, even amid Walker's outward poise. She'd hoped, maybe idealistically, that money would unlock acceptance. She'd figured that owning the most luxurious home, donning the best attire, and exhibiting impeccable etiquette would compel white society to recognize her parity. She misjudged. Race overshadowed riches. In 1919, Walker encountered a deeper personal trial. Her well-being started declining. She'd suffered hypertension for years already. Physicians had urged her to ease up. She'd brushed them off. The enterprise demanded nonstop oversight. The Indianapolis plant required monitoring. Agents for Walker nationwide needed guidance and aid. Fresh items called for innovation. Rivals were duplicating her recipes and vying for her customers. Walker couldn't pause. Her routine stayed grueling. She shuttled endlessly between Indianapolis, New York, and other spots for agent sign-ups or operational issues. She routinely logged 16-hour shifts. Sleep evaded her. Her pressure soared. That April, in 1919, her doctors insisted she quit work right away. Her kidneys were shutting down. The hypertension had caused permanent harm. Walker denied the gravity of her illness. At just 51, she had unfinished tasks aplenty. Back at Villa Lewaro, she attempted relaxation, but full halt proved impossible. From her bed, she oversaw operations. She instructed her assistant on correspondence. She conferred with consultants visiting the grounds. She plotted upcoming releases and promotions. Come summer, 1919, Walker's state had decayed markedly. Intense migraines struck. Her sight grew hazy. Breathing grew labored. Her physicians ordered total confinement to bed. Options were scarce otherwise. In that era's medicine, kidney failure had scant remedies. Walker passed her last days at Villa Lewaro, encircled by relatives and trusted aides. Alelia remained on site to tend her mother. Walker's adopted granddaughter May was there as well. May, the daughter of Alelia from her initial marriage, had been formally adopted by Walker, who regarded her as a genuine granddaughter. Close friends stopped by to offer their respects, discovering Walker physically frail yet intellectually acute. Even in her last days, she conversed about company affairs. Her concerns centered on the enterprise's future once she was gone. Although she had groomed a team of managers and leaders, she questioned whether they could uphold her original ideals in her absence. She fretted over the Walker agents as well. Countless women relied on the firm for their income. Could it sustain them moving forward? Walker issued her concluding directives to attorneys. Her will was already drafted, but she insisted on clarifying particular clauses. 2/3 of the company's forthcoming earnings were earmarked for charitable causes. Designated organizations stood to benefit: the NAACP, Tuskegee Institute, African American orphanages, and senior care facilities. She aimed for her fortune to keep advancing the black community beyond her lifetime. Alelia would take ownership of Villa Lewaro, along with a considerable trust. May, too, was slated for a bequest. The operations of the business would fall to the executives she had mentored. On May 25, 1920, Madame C.J. Walker passed away at Villa Lewaro at the age of 52. The recorded cause was high blood pressure compounded by renal failure. Her remains were readied for public viewing. Throngs sought to honor her memory. The funeral service occurred at Villa Lewaro on May 28th. The sheer volume of attendees overwhelmed the property's capacity. Crowds stretched along the entrance path and overflowed onto the surrounding lawns. Attendees hailed from far-flung urban centers. Walker agents journeyed nationwide, donning their best attire to commemorate the figure who had reshaped their existence. Within the grand home, the open casket lay in the music room, Walker attired in a sophisticated dress. Blossoms adorned every available space. The organ resounded with sacred melodies. Orators recounted her triumphs, highlighting her ascent from destitution to affluence, lauding her charitable efforts and advocacy, and lamenting the departure of a trailblazer who demonstrated Black Americans' potential. Reverend Adam Clayton Powell Sr. from Harlem's Abyssinian Baptist Church gave the principal address extolling Walker's resolve and foresight. He observed how she had witnessed her daughter's secure and prosperous life. She had founded enduring organizations. She had demonstrated to society the ingenuity and strength inherent in Black women. The ceremony extended for 3 hours. Following it, the coffin proceeded to Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx, where Walker was interred in a site she had acquired herself. A modest marker identified the gravesite with her name and lifespan dates. No ostentatious memorial. Walker had always shunned publicity for its own sake. Mainstream press offered restrained reports on her demise. The New York Times featured a concise notice, acknowledging her commercial accomplishments and assets, referencing Villa Lewaro, and appraising her estate above $1 million. The piece stayed objective, yet detached, failing to convey Walker's profound impact on Black communities. African American publications, however, provided in-depth accounts of her death. Outlets like the Chicago Defender, Pittsburgh Courier, and Baltimore Afro-American splashed stories on their front pages. They included homage from influential Black figures, chronicling her generosity and social involvement, portraying her as the preeminent entrepreneur in Black history, and grieving her as an emblem of triumph over formidable barriers for Black Americans. In her 52 years, Walker had emerged from the shadows of slavery's end. She endured childhood hardship. Widowed by age 20, she toiled as a laundress for under $2 daily. From that, she erected a hair care dynasty supporting thousands of jobs. Her riches matched those of prominent white magnates. She commissioned a residence symbolizing Black excellence. Still, full integration into white society eluded her, despite her efforts to bridge that divide. Posthumously, the Madame C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company persisted under expert oversight. The leaders she had cultivated sustained manufacturing and sales networks. Agents nationwide pressed on with product distribution. While the framework stayed viable, the firm lost the spark of invention and expansion that Walker had personally fueled. Alelia Walker Robinson, then 34, succeeded to Villa Lewaro. Raised amid her mother's monumental successes, she now oversaw the property and a vast inheritance. Alelia harbored her own aspirations, markedly distinct from her mother's emphases on enterprise and community elevation. Instead, she envisioned a hub for artistic expression. She sought to position Villa Lewaro as a focal point of the Harlem Renaissance. Alelia ramped up lavish gatherings, welcoming poets, artists, composers, and authors. Langston Hughes emerged as a frequent guest. Figures like Countee Cullen, Zora Neale Hurston, and other key Harlem Renaissance personalities joined in as well. Even white supporters of African American arts showed up. Carl Van Vechten, the white author and photographer who advocated for Black culture, grew into one of Alelia's most trusted companions. Those gatherings at Villa Lewaro during the 1920s earned a mythic reputation. Jazz ensembles performed in the music room, while visitors swirled across the entrance hall in dance. Booze circulated abundantly, even with prohibition in force. The estate that Walker had erected as an emblem of African American success and pride shifted into a haven of indulgent revelry. Alelia, lacked her mother's dedication to political causes. She gave to charities if prompted, yet activism wasn't her path. Instead, she thrived as a high society figure, reveling in opulence and amusement. Critics accused her of frittering away her mother's hard-won heritage. Defenders, however, maintained that fostering black culture via artistic and musical expression counted as a vital step toward racial advancement. Alelia also grappled with money woes that her mother had never known. Keeping Villa Lewaro afloat demanded vast sums, wages for the household staff, land taxes, heating bills, and routine maintenance drained thousands each month. The Great Depression, starting in 1929, turned those burdens into an even steeper challenge. Revenue from the Walker firm plummeted with falling sales. Numerous ex-Walker representatives saw their clientele vanish. Amid economic hardship, working-class black women prioritized meals over hair treatments. The business persisted, but earnings plunged sharply. To make ends meet, Alelia started leasing sections of Villa Lewaro. She turned the third-floor servants' rooms into rental units. The greenhouse and certain outbuildings went to tenants. She even let out second-floor chambers to steady boarders. Gradually, the grand home evolved from a personal domain into a revenue-generating venture. Come the early 1930s, Alelia found it impossible to reside there around the clock. She mostly stayed at her Harlem brownstone. The Irvington property dwindled to a mere getaway for weekends. The domestic help shrank to essentials. The grounds turned wild and unkempt. Chambers once buzzing with company now echoed in silence. Alelia passed away abruptly on August 9, 1931. A cerebral hemorrhage struck her at a companion's birthday event in Long Branch, New Jersey. At 46, her loss stunned the Harlem scene. Throngs packed her service at the Abyssinian Baptist Church. Langston Hughes penned a tribute in verse. The cortege wound through streets for blocks. Alelia's passing spelled trouble for Villa Lewaro. She had racked up over $100,000 in liabilities. Her holdings fell short of settling them. Daughter May took ownership, yet showed no desire or means to sustain the place. Foreclosure hit in 1932. Villa Lewaro went under the hammer to pay off Alelia's debts. The lavish build, which had run over $250,000, fetched just about $47,000. The Irvington Convalescent Home, a discreet care center, snapped it up. They repurposed Villa Lewaro for senior residence. The music room turned communal lounge. The dining space handled routine group dining. Sleeping quarters got partitioned into tinier spots. The pipe organ vanished to auction. Original furnishings mostly cleared out at sale. The house that once stood for black prosperity and triumph faded into an unremarkable health outpost. Few occupants knew its storied past. Villa Lewaro lingered as a nursing facility for years on end. The structure wore down bit by bit. Upkeep got postponed. The roof sprang drips, panes shattered without fixes. Terrace plantings surrendered to overgrowth and brush. The ornamental pond fissured and clogged with rubbish. Into the early 1960s, area advocates for heritage started appreciating Villa Lewaro's legacy. The civil rights era sparked fresh curiosity in African-American pasts. A new wave unearthed Madame C.J. Walker's tale. Scholars delved into her biography and cataloged her feats. Villa Lewaro cropped up in writings on black business pioneers and the Harlem Renaissance, yet acclaim failed to bring repair funds. The care home kept running. The decay marched on. In 1973, it shuttered at last. The site lay idle for seasons. Break-ins smashed glazing. Moisture ruined inner areas. Ceilings shed plaster chunks. The estate seemed bound for the wrecking ball. Then, in 1976, Harold Dooley, a black financier from New Orleans, acquired Villa Lewaro. His outlay came to roughly $60,000. Dooley aimed to revive the manor and safeguard it as a landmark. He poured funds into fixes, swapping the roof, mending pipes and wiring, and shoring up the framework. Still, a complete overhaul stretched past his means. In 1981, it earned status as a National Historic Landmark. This federal milestone highlighted Villa Lawaro's vital role in the nation's past, though it offered no restoration funds. The estate stayed under private ownership, closed off from visitors. Over time, the owner kept up steady enhancements. He delved into the home's initial decor and strived to revive Walker's original aesthetic. He even located certain auctioned pieces of original furniture from years before. He oversaw the refurbishing of the entryway's marble flooring and the majestic stairway. During the 1990s and 2000s, fascination with Madame Walker's legacy kept expanding. Publications, films, and scholarly works delved into her experiences. The Indianapolis facility of the Madame C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company was safeguarded and repurposed as a community hub. Her Indianapolis residence was similarly maintained as a museum, yet Villa Lawaro, her pinnacle accomplishment, stayed mostly obscure to most people. In 2012, the Walker Family Archives initiated campaigns to spotlight Villa Lawaro. Alelia Bundles, Walker's great-great-granddaughter and chronicler, dedicated herself to spreading her forebear's tale. Through her writings, talks, and pushes for safeguarding Villa Lawaro, she amplified its profile. By 2014, the National Trust for Historic Preservation named Villa Lawaro among the country's 11 most at-risk heritage sites. This spotlight drew notice and modest backing. Conservation efforts gained momentum. In 2018, fresh proprietors acquired Villa Lawaro, pledging to finish a thorough overhaul. The initiative sought to restore the house to its 1918 splendor. Designers examined Vertner Tandy's blueprints. Experts pored over era-specific images and records from Walker's time. Artisans started mending and reconstructing impaired features. The revival persists today. The foyer has regained its former splendor. The music parlor is next for rebuilding. The estate's gardens are being reseeded based on the initial landscaping plans. Once finished, Villa Lawaro will welcome guests as a museum and learning venue. Tourists will explore the spaces where Walker hosted African-American influencers and supportive whites. They will glimpse spots where Harlem Renaissance creators convened. They will gain insights into the trailblazer who erected this tribute to African-American success. Walker's influence reached well past Villa Lawaro and her own fortune. She pioneered an enterprise framework that reshaped countless existences. During the height of her enterprise, Walker had 20,000 to 40,000 agents in her network. These women marketed goods, showcased methods, and enlisted fresh recruits. They gained earnings that fostered self-reliance and respect. For numerous ones, serving as a Walker agent marked their initial grasp on financial autonomy. Beyond jobs, the Walker approach delivered instruction and growth. Participants acquired expertise in commerce, client relations, and self-image. Walker required her agents to attire themselves sharply, articulate thoughts precisely, and carry themselves with poise. She viewed each agent as an emblem of their people. Their triumphs would affirm black women's prowess. Their setbacks could fuel prejudice. Her workshops covered hands-on abilities, strategies for engaging prospects without desperation, tactics for showcasing items compellingly, ways to counter doubts and seal deals, methods for budgeting funds and monitoring stock. Such know-how was alien to many women before. Walker further emphasized poise. Agents needed to stay tidy, polished, and suitably attired. They ought to hold posture firmly and meet gazes directly. They must converse assuredly. These teachings transcended commerce. Walker was equipping women to earn esteem in a world that withheld it. The effects ran deep. Agents shared how the role reshaped their self-view. No longer mere house aides or field hands, they emerged as entrepreneurs. They managed patrons, regions, and revenue targets. They decided on stock and costs. They nurtured ties with buyers. Certain agents amassed riches by local measures. Elite earners pulled in thousands yearly. They bought houses, funded higher education for kids, acquired real estate, and launched ventures. Walker championed such initiative. She urged agents to envision more than peddling her wares. The yearly Walker agent gatherings turned into key fixtures in black locales. Women convened to exchange tips, discover innovations, and honor wins. Walker leveraged these to embed ideals of financial freedom and ethnic uplift. She brought in notable orators. She honored standout achievers. She ensured her agents felt cherished and significant. These events doubled as activism platforms. Walker harnessed them to advance her favored initiatives. She motivated her agents to become members of the NAACP and various civil rights groups. She pressed them to participate in voting after women secured the right in 1920. She presented their entrepreneurial accomplishments as a pathway to racial progress. When black women amassed fortunes, they would secure influence and dignity. Walker's outlook merged capitalist pursuits with efforts for racial elevation, which unsettled certain black thinkers. While they admired her accomplishments, they feared that emphasizing commercial triumphs might sideline deeper political battles. He contended that achieving legal parity and civil liberties ought to precede economic gains. In opposition, Booker T. Washington had advocated precisely the sort of self-sufficient enterprise that Walker embodied. He maintained that African Americans should establish enterprises and acquire assets prior to seeking civic rights. Walker's triumphs appeared to affirm his perspective. She demonstrated that black business ventures could flourish despite Jim Crow oppression. Walker herself declined to pick sides in these ideologies. She developed enterprises while backing civil rights efforts. She gathered riches and gave freely to groups battling for fairness. She held that financial strength and civic authority were intertwined. African Americans required each. Walker's promotional tactics pioneered new territory as well. She ranked among the earliest U.S. business pioneers to incorporate before and after images in promotions. Her agents distributed photos depicting women with impaired hair prior to Walker remedies and vibrant locks afterward. These visuals offered tangible evidence of the remedy's success. Walker relied heavily on endorsements too. Pleased users penned accounts of their outcomes. Such endorsements featured in promotions within African American publications. They fostered reliability and confidence. Women recognized that everyday individuals, much like themselves, had gained from Walker remedies. Walker's personal likeness grew essential to her enterprise. Her photo graced each item. Promotions highlighted her life story, underscoring her ascent from hardship to affluence. She emerged as an emblem of potential. If Sarah Breedlove could evolve into Madame C.J. Walker, what could other African American women accomplish? This approach to personal promotion was groundbreaking during the early 1900s. Scarcely any companies centered on the originator's persona and background. Walker grasped that she offered far beyond hair care. She provided optimism and ambition. The dispute surrounding hair straightening persisted without resolution. Marcus Garvey, the African-American nationalist figure, condemned black women who altered their hair. He claimed it showed self-hatred and denial of African traits. Supporters of Walker countered that her method advanced wellness, not conformity. Tamed hair proved simpler to handle and arrange. It enabled black women to appear polished in settings rife with bias. The discussion exposed underlying conflicts in African American circles over self-image, integration, and standards of propriety. Walker addressed these divides by stressing that her remedies offered options to women. They might straighten or leave their hair natural. They could opt for length or brevity. The emphasis lay on vitality and autonomy, not uniformity. Walker's charitable efforts mirrored her principles. She gave to entities fostering learning and personal growth. The Tuskegee Institute obtained major contributions. The same held for the Palmer Memorial Institute in North Carolina, an African-American secondary academy. Walker sponsored scholarships for African-American youth pursuing higher education. She aided the NAACP's efforts against lynching. From 1917 through 1919, countless African Americans fell victim to Southern lynchings. Walker supplied funds for probes and court battles. She leveraged her influence to denounce ethnic brutality. Walker backed residences for seniors and shelters for black orphans, too. She aided African American congregations, delivering community aid. She donated to black medical centers serving those denied by white ones. Her giving proved purposeful. She backed establishments that fortified African American societies. In 1912, Walker committed $1,000 to the Indianapolis YMCA. The commitment included a stipulation. Fellow black locals had to add $4,000 more. Walker sought communal investment rather than sole reliance on her bounty. The neighborhood rose to the occasion. The YMCA construction proceeded. Walker's matching donation method spurred group involvement. She employed her assets to attract further support. In 1917, Walker joined a gathering of rights advocates in New York. The assembly organized a quiet procession against lynching and ethnic aggression. Walker volunteered to cover travel expenses for attendees. The event occurred on July 28, 1917. Roughly 10,000 African Americans proceeded wordlessly along Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. Protesters held placards decrying brutality and bias against black people. Thanks to Walker's financial backing, the event had come to fruition. Beyond that, she leveraged her enterprise to promote civic initiatives. She urged her sales representatives to sign up eligible voters in their local areas. Once the 19th Amendment secured suffrage for women in 1920, Walker pressed black women to cast ballots right away. She grasped that true influence in politics demanded unity and active involvement. Throughout her years, Walker's ties to white elites stayed fraught with tension. She built alliances with reform-minded whites who championed equality for African Americans. A few joined gatherings at Villa Lawaro. Others partnered with her on charitable endeavors. These bonds were sincere, yet calculated moves. Walker knew progress against racism hinged on support from white advocates. Still, she never overlooked the fact that most whites, no matter their status or schooling, saw her as inherently lesser due to her skin color. The snubs from Irvington's exclusive clubs stung profoundly. Walker had hoped that showcasing elegance and poise would erode biases over time. She'd poured vast fortunes into crafting a residence rivaling those of white tycoons, trips abroad, art acquisitions, and polished etiquette for the affluent class, all her efforts. Yet, it changed nothing. Her white neighbors refused to treat her as a peer. Certain white reactions toward Walker came across as condescending instead of outright antagonistic. Reporters portrayed her as a remarkable black individual, suggesting her achievements were outliers that didn't reflect broader potential in her race. Such accounts lauded her even as they perpetuated notions of black inadequacy. Walker spotted this dynamic, but pursued coverage from white outlets nonetheless. Exposure to audiences could draw in new buyers, irrespective of the reporter's biases. Walker also drew flack from segments of the African American upper crust. Fairer-complexioned professionals who'd climbed the ladder often kept their distance from darker-hued businesswomen like her. They saw her hair care line as too tied to the everyday struggles of lower-income black women. In reply, Walker highlighted her pride in her own deep complexion and modest roots. She wouldn't atone for offering goods tailored to average black females. This position won admiration from working-class African Americans, though some in the elite stayed lukewarm. The divide by shade in black circles proved stark and wounding. Walker steered through it by prioritizing her company and giving efforts over chasing approval from specific cliques. Few knew how soon Walker's ailments had set in. Starting in 1917, high blood pressure symptoms plagued her. Her readings soared to perilous levels. Physicians cautioned her often to ease up on pressures and cut back her grueling schedule. Walker made attempts to heed them, yet compliance felt out of reach. Her operations demanded round-the-clock oversight. Rivals mimicked her recipes and slashed costs to steal clients. Constant innovation was key to holding ground. Plus, she bore a heavy duty to the multitude of women relying on the Walker firm for income. A slowdown on her part risking collapse would devastate them. She brought on extra overseers and aimed to hand off tasks, but relinquishing reins proved tough. Everything stemmed from her solo grit. No one knew the workings like she did. She fretted that stand-ins might botch choices, harming the legacy she'd nurtured for years. The strain mounted relentlessly. Her hypertension worsened steadily. Migraines and vertigo episodes struck. Come 1918, kidney function started failing. The ongoing condition inflicted lasting injury. Today's treatments could control it via drugs and habit shifts. Back then, options were slim. Prescriptions centered on downtime, which Walker couldn't sustain, and meal tweaks that offered scant relief. Walker sensed her end nearing. In her last year, she poured energy into securing the firm's future, sans her presence. She elevated top staff and granted them wider leeway. She recorded workflows and protocols. She jotted precise guidelines on recipes and quality benchmarks. Attention turned to her testament and legacy arrangements, too. Walker aimed to direct her fortune toward uplifting black causes posthumously. With legal counsel, she outlined donations to key groups. 2/3 of ongoing company earnings would fuel philanthropy. She detailed recipient entities and fund allocations precisely. Priorities included schooling, civil rights advocacy, aid for seniors, and care for the young without parents. Her closing stretch at Villa Lawaro brought hardship. Walker spent most days bedridden. Mobility now needed help from others. She struggled with shortness of breath. Her eyesight faded over time. Yet her intellect stayed keen, right up to the very last days. She kept welcoming guests and talking shop with them. Alelia remained at the estate to tend to her mother. The bond between the two was intricate. Alelia admired her mother deeply, yet she had spent her life overshadowed by Walker's prominence. From a young age, she had been involved in the company, though she never shared Walker's intense drive for it. Alelia favored opulence and social diversions. Walker, on the other hand, thrived on creating companies and championing various initiatives. At their core, the pair were quite dissimilar. Walker fretted over the future following her passing. Would Alelia keep the enterprise afloat? Would she uphold the philanthropic pledges Walker had established? Would she safeguard Villa Lawaro as an emblem of African American success? Walker voiced these anxieties to trusted confidants, but she could only trust that her daughter would step up to the challenge. Walker passed away on May 25, 1920. Her demise occurred mere months after the 19th Amendment granted women the vote. Walker had backed the suffrage movement and urged her agents to gear up for civic involvement. She never got the chance to cast a ballot herself. The funeral at Villa Lawaro turned into a landmark occasion for African American communities. Grievers journeyed from all over the nation. Walker agents arrived dressed in their best attire to pay respects to the figure who had transformed their circumstances. Prominent civil rights advocates delivered praises, hailing Walker as an icon of African American potential and resolve. They highlighted how she had shown that African American women could thrive in top-tier business arenas. Outlets in black press circles offered in-depth reports on Walker's passing and enduring impact. The Chicago Defender featured a dedicated spread honoring her accomplishments. The Pittsburgh Courier published a sprawling homage spanning multiple pages. These outlets recognized the profound relevance of Walker's narrative to their audiences. She had illustrated how African Americans could surmount immense barriers and amass fortunes. In contrast, mainstream white papers provided restrained accounts of her death. The New York Times notice was concise and straightforward. It noted her riches and entrepreneurial triumphs, yet skimmed over the deeper meaning of her feats. The piece portrayed Walker more as a novelty than as a pivotal force in American commerce. Such differences in reporting underscored wider trends of racial marginalization. Dominant white establishments acknowledged African American accomplishments sporadically, frequently downplaying their weight. Walker's interment at Woodlawn Cemetery positioned her alongside other distinguished figures from U.S. history. The site contained burials of affluent tycoons, public officials, and influential artists. Walker had secured her burial site in advance of her death, guaranteeing a site of distinction. Her headstone was modest, inscribed solely with her name and lifespan. She had no interest in flashy tributes. Following Walker's departure, the Madame C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company persisted for many years. It stayed lucrative into the 1920s amid growing rivalry. The Great Depression took a heavy toll on revenue, but the firm endured. During the 1950s and 1960s, evolving preferences in beauty, alongside fresh rivals, weakened its standing. African American women gained broader options for hair products. Large companies started targeting black markets. The Walker firm found it hard to keep pace. In 1985, production halted at the company. The label was acquired by another entity that kept offering a slim selection of items. Nowadays, Madame C.J. Walker beauty items persist on the market, but the operation hardly echoes Walker's foundational venture. The Indianapolis factory structure was restored and repurposed as the Madame Walker Legacy Center. It includes a performance hall, gathering areas, and displays on Walker's biography. Her residence in Indianapolis was likewise maintained as a historical exhibit. These landmarks draw those keen on African American heritage and business innovation. Walker's tale has appeared in countless volumes, films, and learning resources. Alelia Bundles, Walker's great-great-granddaughter, pursued a career in journalism and biography, delving deeply into the family's past. Her volume on Walker sparked fresh interest in her forebears' triumphs. Walker's influence reaches well past the goods she marketed or the residence she erected. She reshaped opportunities for African American women across the country. Prior to Walker, scarcely any African American women wielded substantial fortunes. The majority toiled as household help, farm workers, or in similarly underpaid roles. Walker demonstrated that African American women could establish firms, gather resources, and hold their own in commerce. Her accomplishments motivated waves of African American business starters. Countless African American women launched their ventures in the years after Walker's death. A great many pointed to her as their muse. They recognized that an African American woman raised in hardship could forge a dynasty. If Walker had achieved it, maybe they could as well. Walker transformed black women's perceptions of their own worth. Through her marketing, she highlighted elegance, pride, and self-worth. She empowered black women by affirming their right to appear and feel at their peak. In a time when mainstream American society routinely belittled black features, this perspective was groundbreaking. Walker championed the idea that black women possessed inherent beauty and merited proper attention. The business framework she developed served as a blueprint for subsequent enterprises. Her system of direct selling, with autonomous representatives earning commissions on product sales, grew widespread across various sectors. Later giants like Avon and Tupperware adopted comparable strategies. Within the black community, Walker blazed the trail for this method. Showing it could yield significant fortunes. Her charitable efforts set a precedent that other affluent black figures emulated. She showed that prosperous black business owners bore responsibilities to their communities, including investing in schooling, backing civil rights initiatives, and aiding the underprivileged. This ethos of reciprocity evolved into a cornerstone of black economic advancement traditions. Throughout the 1900s, numerous prominent black individuals mirrored Walker's path by bolstering historically black universities, civil rights groups, and local organizations. The conversations Walker ignited surrounding hair, aesthetics, and self-image persist into the present day. Black women continue to grapple with societal expectations on their appearance. Movements advocating natural hair have contested the notion that chemically treated hair is superior or more suitable for professional environments. Today's discussions mirror the tensions that arose in Walker's era. Walker probably would have endorsed black women exercising autonomy over their hairstyles. After all, her enterprise thrived on offering women variety and agency. The saga of Villa Lawaro underscores the fragility of black prosperity in the United States. Walker constructed a stunning residence through her diligence and sharp business instincts. Yet, just over a decade after her passing, the property slipped away to lenders and shifted to different purposes. The riches she amassed proved hard to hand down to heirs. Alelia fell short of her mother's entrepreneurial prowess and rigor. While the Great Depression eroded countless estates, black assets faced even greater threats. This cycle has echoed across U.S. history time and again. Black households amass fortunes only for them to evaporate in 1 or 2 generations. Institutional racism, restricted financing, and hurdles in estate transmission have long impeded black families from sustaining wealth across generations. Walker's narrative spotlights both the potential for black economic gains and the obstacles to safeguarding them. The 21st century revival of Villa Lawaro symbolizes a measure of restorative equity. The estate, once spurned by white society and left to decay, is now hailed as a key cultural landmark. Conservation initiatives affirm the significance of Walker's accomplishments in shaping U.S. heritage. She transcended mere business success. As a trailblazer, she defied racial barriers and broadened the horizons for black achievement. Villa Lawaro endures as a testament to her resolve. Once fully restored and accessible to the public, the site will unveil her complete journey. Guests will trace her origins in destitution, her hardships as a widowed laundress, her innovative business success, and her ascent to affluence. They will tour the home she commissioned and grasp its profound meaning for a black woman erecting such an edifice in 1918. Visitors will also explore the exclusions she endured, doors shut tight despite her fortune, and how she countered by founding parallel networks. Walker's great-great-granddaughter, Alelia Bundles, has devoted years to sharing her forebears' tale with modern viewers. Through authoring volumes, crafting films, and delivering global talks, Bundles has stressed that Walker's feats extended beyond individual wins. They marked progress for every black woman who followed. Each black female founder, each black female executive, each black woman steering her financial fate owes a debt to Walker's groundwork. In 2020, a Netflix miniseries chronicled Walker's biography, exposing her saga to vast audiences unfamiliar with her. It inspired young black women to realize that, 100 years prior, a figure resembling them had forged a vast enterprise. The show reignited fascination with her biography and enduring impact. Book sales on her life surged. Foot traffic rose at sites honoring her. Online platforms buzzed with chatter on her milestones. Her chronicles struck a deep chord amid the Black Lives Matter era. Advocates pointed out that black affluence and triumphs offered no shield from prejudice. Walker once America's wealthiest black woman, still encountered white rejection as an inferior. Her path vividly exposed the deep roots of structural bias. Individual accomplishments couldn't dismantle the entrenched obstacles. This insight allowed modern viewers to grasp the mechanics of racism. Madame C.J. Walker's approach to business keeps shaping African-American enterprise. She stressed that financial self-reliance equaled liberation. To her sales representatives, she explained how managing their efforts and earnings bestowed honor and authority. In her view, fostering African-American enterprises bolstered African-American neighborhoods. Such ideas still form the backbone of African-American economic perspectives. Groups aiding African-American business owners frequently point to Walker as a key influence. Her focus on instruction and learning impacts today's corporate growth initiatives. Walker recognized that thriving demanded more than quality items. It called for expertise, insight, and self-assurance. She poured resources into equipping her representatives with all the tools for victory. Today's startup support centers and skill-building efforts echo this framework. Walker also grasped the value of visibility. She featured her image on each item. She urged her representatives to stand out boldly and with pride. She aimed for African-American women to recognize their potential in thriving ventures. Her awareness of visibility's role came well before current talks on equity and belonging. Walker realized that witnessing a similar figure triumph made achievement feel attainable. Although unarticulated as an official slogan, the creed Walker embodied boils down to this: African-American women merited financial autonomy, honor, and esteem. They ought to oversee their own efforts and reap rewards from their labor. They should uplift one another and create structures that uplift their neighborhoods. They must never atone for their drive or accomplishments. This worldview upended virtually all the era's stereotypes regarding race, sex, and social standing. Walker spurned the constraints society sought to enforce. She scorned the belief that African-American women were destined for poverty. She cast aside the expectation that African-American women stick to household roles. She ridiculed claims that African-American women lacked entrepreneurial savvy. Through her life, she demonstrated these stereotypes were baseless. Villa Lawaro captures Walker's defiance against boundaries. The estate served as a bold declaration. A woman of African descent born into plantation life was erecting a grand residence. She was staking a claim in a privileged white enclave. She was insisting on parity. Irvington's white inhabitants might bar her from their social circles, but they couldn't ignore how her home matched their grand properties. Walker compelled them to reckon with her existence. The residence endures on its elevated spot above the Hudson River. Its pale stucco facade and crimson-tiled roof stay prominent from the waterway. Boaters gliding past spot the Italian Renaissance-style villa and ponder its backstory. Increasing numbers recognize it as the creation of America's inaugural self-made female millionaire. More are discovering the tale as Villa Lawaro's revival draws fresh interest. The estate that scandalized white New York elites over 100 years back is at last gaining acclaim for its true essence. Beyond mere opulence or riches, it symbolizes resolve, self-worth, and resistance to others' biases. Sarah Breedlove entered the world destitute. She departed as Madame C.J. Walker, proprietor of a vast enterprise and a stately home. Her fortune couldn't secure white society's approval, but it enabled the founding of enduring organizations, the hiring of countless individuals, and the motivation of vast numbers. Villa Lawaro persists as evidence that a single woman's drive and toil could redefine the bounds of possibility. The estate wasn't meant solely for her. It was intended for every African-American woman who followed, demonstrating what they too could attain.